We've all got a friend, or a friend of a friend, or we are that friend who keeps saying they're interested in fighting games and they love to play them, but they have this list of excuses that ranges from I couldn't memorize the combos or input special moves to, I don't have a controller, I don't have a fight stick, how am I going to play the game? It covers the whole spectrum. Every concern or argument you could bring up, it's covered by this long list of excuses that they somehow memorized, but they couldn't memorize a combo. It makes you start to think like, man, if this person has an interest in something but continues to put up these barriers for themselves, then getting started must be something quite scary. And I'd be inclined to believe you if I hadn't been playing these games for the past few years, because I can tell you that getting started is the hardest part. The scariest part is when you get right here. What you're looking at is a Dunning Kruger effect. It measures skill acquisition and it weighs our competence against our confidence. Now I know you're probably wondering, well, if getting started isn't the scariest part, then what is? And what's with that sharp change in confidence there in the graph? Once you finally muster up that courage to get on the game, press some buttons, mess around a little bit, you realize that in a cruel twist of fate, this is the easiest part. Getting started is the easiest part. It's when ignorance is bliss. It's when you have nothing to lose. But that glass castle of confidence you get to live in for a little while doesn't last forever. Slowly things start to break as you ask more questions and you learn more concepts. You go from how do I input the special move to how do I use it? How is it applicable and practical? And as you start to try new things, you begin to fail. It's a part of growth, but it's hard to accept. And as you fail, your confidence starts to wane. And that's when we take a plunge into what I think is the darkest part of anybody's fighting game career. The Valley of Despair is a point at which you find yourself at an all-time low. You have no confidence. You're not ignorant anymore. You understand how little it is you actually know about this game and how much effort it's going to take to get to where you'd like to be. Ignorance has gone from being our safe place to being our demon, to being our enemy, to being something that we fear. Concepts that we had a very vague idea of in the beginning, like, I don't know, frame data, combo structure, pressure, block strings, things like that start to show themselves and they start letting us know that they're coming and that we need to learn. It's a brave new world we discovered, and there's just so much to learn that it's very easy to get overwhelmed and just give up. And what makes it so much worse is that as you try climbing out of this pit and the further you get out of it, it feels like things don't get easier. The problems just appear in different forms. It's like the sides of the valley as you try to climb out are just covered in oil and you're gripping at rocks and you just can't get your footing. You just keep slipping back into it. When we fell into the pit, we might have been working on anti-airs. We might have been working on optimization of our combos or something like that. Something very tangible that we could feel and we could do on our little fight stick very easily. And when you're trying to climb out, it's much more ambiguous. We're talking about things like footsies and mind games, and we've understood at this point that there's a guy on the other side of that screen, and he's thinking about the game just as hard as me, and I have to outplay him. I have to condition him. I have to do all these less tangible things, these things that are more mental and force you to think, and they might happen or they might not happen. That's what makes them ambiguous. And there's no one way to do them anymore. You know, if you learn a combo, there's one way you do that combo in that sequence. When you're learning about footsies, nobody can teach you one way to play footsies. It feels like the further you go along and the more you learn, the less you actually know. You just keep falling into that cycle. And eventually those dark thoughts reach you and you think things like, well, I've hit a wall or I've hit a plateau and maybe I can get through it or maybe I can get over this plateau. And then it gets worse when you can't. You start to think things like, maybe this is as good as I'll ever get. You know, I've just reached my limit. I can't do anymore. For me, this is the dark side of fighting games. And for you, it might be the dark side of some other skill you're trying to learn. It's the point at which we've gained so much knowledge, we just don't know how to wield it. And it scares us because it's like, I put in so much work and I learned all this stuff, but I can't figure out how to put it all together. That's the problem. I can't put it into one cohesive package to make myself better. And so learning new things just feels counterintuitive. It feels like I'm just adding layers to this game that I already don't understand. And this is the point where you get stagnant, where you just end up stuck in the valley, wallowing in despair. Some people get stuck here and they're okay with that. They're okay with staying in the valley of despair forever. But I'm not one of those people, and I hope you aren't either. This is the part that I think is actually the hardest. The part at which you have all of the pieces, you just have to put the puzzle together. And what's the first rule of putting together any puzzle? Of putting together anything, period? You can't force the pieces together. And so I've taken a much more laid back and hands-off approach to neutral lately. I've let my muscle memory kind of carry me. It's not autopiloting. It's the fact that we've worked so hard to build up this muscle memory, so now we can use it. And the game becomes more about the opponent at this point. You know, we can pay attention to what they're doing. We can pay attention to what they like to do. And we just react to things based purely on muscle memory. And I know you're like me. You're stubborn. You don't want to rely on this little muscle memory autopilot gimmick nonsense, right? You want to think about these situations and you want to react to things and feel like you're, I don't know, you're having like a very visceral experience. But in all honesty, you can't process all the information. You have to pick and choose what it is you need to focus on. But I feel like this concept alone has gotten me so much closer to the right side of the graph where everybody wants to be. But now it's just incremental little steps. It's the little victories I'm focusing on, and I think that's keeping me going. But yeah, I just really wanted to talk about this topic. I didn't know how to present it to you in a more entertaining way than me just talking about the graph and posting it every so often. Maybe it would have been better to, I don't know, put it behind some gameplay. Who knows? But I just hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it helped you in some way. And if it did, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again very soon.